Hi, welcome to the Decorative Arts Center of Ohio. My name is Andrew Richmond and I'm an antiques and art appraiser. And today we're going to be talking about lighting and the variety of lighting that is on display here at the Decorative Arts Center. The history of lighting, of course, begins with candles, one of the most basic forms of lighting and the earliest. Although numerous forms of lighting supplanted candles over the course of the first, 100 years or so of American history, candles still remained in use in some capacity. This suite here on this mantle, it's called a Gerondo Set, and it usually has a center candelabra with 3 arms, and it's flanked by single candles, and often they are quite decorative. In this case, they're gilded brass figures. Candles don't put off a lot of light. Prisms kind of help reflect the light. Putting on mantelpieces in front of mirrors often helped, again, reflect that light. This suite here was made by a firm of Shaw in Boston, probably in the 1830s or 1840s, so pretty late to be using candles, but not everybody could afford to have a house completely outfitted with various types of oil or gas-based lights. So the very earliest types of oil lamps were literally just small containers of oil with a piece of cloth sitting in it. It acted as a wick, and those were used during ancient times. In the 19th century, or 18th and 19th century, oil lighting became more sophisticated as new technologies were developed. In the end of the 18th century in France, a man named Argon developed this method of having an oil light where there was actually a hollow wick so that the oxygen could get up into the wick, and that allowed the frame to burn much brighter than otherwise. And so Argon lamps, they came from very simple little lamps to very elaborate fireplace sets, such as this. This is a pear made in New York, made of bronze with gilt accents and, again, prisms to help with the reflection. The shades that were frosted, which kind of diffused and brightened the light a little bit, but they could be burned very brightly with just those 2 lights. They could produce lots more candle power. I mean, a lot more light than just simple oil lamps or certainly candles. By the middle of the 19th century, the wealthiest and most fashionable homes would have been piped for gas. Gas lighting first became a thing with streetlights, particularly in London, and then it moved out from there in the early 19th century. And then by the time you get to the middle of the 19th century, wealthier homes were actually piped for gas inside the homes, particularly in grand entry halls and grand parlors where you could have a chandelier that was powered by gas or a gasolier. And this is a wonderful example here. It's actually one of a set of 3, a suite of 3 here at the Decorative Arts Center. This one in the main hallway and then the 2 in the double parlors. They're beautifully cast bronze with snakes and a figure at center with all the gilt accents. And then again, those globes would have been helpful to help diffuse and brighten the lights to make this hallway and the parlors just as bright as possible. Gaslight would have helped that immensely. Whether the chandelier was powered by candles or gas or oil, regardless, if they're high on the ceiling, one of the challenges is lighting them and then extinguishing them when you're done with the room. A number of methods of making that happen have developed over the years. This is a particularly interesting example because of the complex mechanism to allow this chandelier to be lowered down to chest level, to light the lamps at the beginning of the evening and at the end of the evening, lower it back and extinguish them and then raise it back up. From the most basic oil lamps that were just a container with a wick, in order to make lights brighter and more effective, they continued to tweak the technology to make that happen. And we have a couple of examples here that show some of those different types of lighting technologies. And underneath the shade, where the flame actually is called the burner, but the important part is right here. In this, it's this brass part right here that's called the font. And the font is what contains the oil. Ideally, you want a big font to hold as much oil as possible so you don't have to fill it as often. But if it's too big, it's going to be top heavy or it's going to look ungainly, so try to strike that balance. This is called an astral lamp. So it's a single font right underneath the burner, so when the flame is lit, astral, star, it looks like a star. It's a single point of light that extends in all directions. This lamp is a bit different. It might not look visually all that different, but there's a key difference. Instead of a single font underneath the burner, the font is actually integral to the ring that holds the shade. What that allows is for the light that gets cast downward onto the desk or the table to not have the shadow. This is called a penumbra lamp. Penumbra, without shadow, Latin for without shadow. So this was not necessarily the most popular type, but for specific uses, if you needed to have the light right on the surface, this was the good kind of lamp to go with.